Hi, and welcome to the second season of our World of Publishing webinar series. My name is Lamar Giles, and I've been a professional storyteller for over 25 years. I've published over a dozen novels. I'm Swim Library's inaugural writer-in-residence, and I'm here to engage the William and Mary community in fun and exciting ways that promote our incredible library, literacy, and general creative pursuits. The World of Publishing webinar series offers insightful conversations with publishing professionals to demystify an often perplexing industry. It is suitable for the career-minded writer, the casual writer, the student writer, and those who are simply curious. In today's session, we're going to be talking about award winners. The conversation will be recorded and available for those unable to join us live today, but for those in the session, a Q&A box is available at the bottom of the window for you to submit questions that we will attempt to address either during the conversation or during a designated Q&A session before we close out. If we miss your question, you can email me at lgiles@wm.edu, and I will attempt to get you your answer. Without further delay, let's meet today's guest. Elizabeth Acevedo was the 2022 Young People's Poet Laureate and the New York Times bestselling author of The Poet X, which won the National Book Award for Young People's Literature, the Michael L. Prince Award, the Pura Belpré Award, the Carnegie Medal, the Boston Globe Horn Book Award, and the Walter Award. She is also the author of With the Fire on High, which was named a Best Book of the Year by the New York Public Library, NPR, Publishers Weekly, and School Library Journal, and Clap When You Land, which was a Boston Globe Horn Book Honor Book and a Kirkus finalist. She holds a BA in Performing Arts from the George Washington University and an MFA in Creative Writing from the University of Maryland. Acevedo has been a fellow of Cave Canem, Cantomundo, and a participant in the Callaloo Writers Workshops. She is a National Poetry Slam champion and resides in Washington, D.C. with her loves. Meg Medina served as the 2023-2024 National Ambassador for Young People's Literature. She's the author of many notable works for young readers of all ages, including her newest middle grade novel and first fantasy, Graciela in the Abyss. Her Newbery Medal winning and New York Times bestselling book, Merci Suárez Changes Gears, is the first in a trilogy. Meg Medina's work, including Mango, Abuela, and Me, examines how cultures intersect through the eyes of young people. She brings audiences stories that speak to both what is unique in Latino culture and qualities that are universal. The daughter of Cuban immigrants, she grew up in Queens, New York, and now lives in Richmond, Virginia. Hello, Meg and Liz.
Hey, how are you?
Great. Thank you for coming out. Before we get into this, I'll say it for everyone. You two have the accolades and awards enough to fill the room that I'm in. So I don't want anyone to think I'm neglecting anything. We'll probably skew more towards Liz's National Book Award and Meg's Newbery Medal because I have some personal connections to the instances where those things occurred. But please, we want to just give you a round of applause for all you've done and all you continue to do. And to kick things off, I always like to ask, where did you grow up and how did you come to storytelling? Can we start with you, Liz?
For sure. It's such a pleasure to be here with both of you. And so want to start with that. I'm so grateful. I was born and raised in New York City, and my parents are both from the Dominican Republic. And I would say that culturally, that background definitely affected how I came to storytelling. I remember being 5 years old. My mom would leave me in my neighbor's house upstairs, and Doña Reina, I think, would get tired of me. I was one of those, they called me a perica, like a perico, like a parrot, always talking. She would be like, I need you to go sing to all of my plants. She had her whole house surrounded with plants. And I probably occupied 2-3 hours making up songs to these plants. And I remember at like 4 years old, probably one of my earliest memories, thinking one day I'm going to be able to write these songs down so I don't forget. Right. And so there was something about wanting to make permanent language, wanting to return to my language, wanting to give my language to, these beings, but also community. And my mom was an incredible storyteller. I didn't grow up with a lot of fairy tales, but I grew up listening to her tell me about growing up very rural in the Dominican Republic and stealing her father's like mare and then falling off the horse and her brother chopping off his finger cutting mangoes. And so for me, there was such vibrancy in the background that I came from and the people that I came from. And then I grew up with hip hop, right? And so it was like they were, two sides of the same coin. When my parents would go to bed, my brother would play, Big Pun and Eve and Tupac and Nas. And so I grew up realizing that music was a form of storytelling that made its way into every kind of household, right? We had books in my house, but I wouldn't say that we were a family of readers, but we were a family of music. And so it felt very much like the music that is for us, or the kinds of storytelling that for us is a oral storytelling. And those were the two, kind of music was the first instance of storytelling long before I thought I could be a novelist.
Thank you for that, Meg. What about you?
So very similar. I did not grow up in Manhattan, but I grew up in New York also, but in Flushing, Queens. If any of you remember that old show, The Nanny, with Fran Drescher, right? Except I don't have that accent, I don't think. Pero I was from Flushing, Queens. My parents came to the United States when Cuba became communist. They came at different times. My family was sort of fractured. My father first, my mother, then my aunts. So there was a lot of trauma around that. And I think that one way that people deal with traumatic events is through story. And that was absolutely what happened in my family, like your family, Liz. You know, I had my mother and my aunts, todas pericas, right? Pericos. They just told stories constantly about their lives, like who they were,
Mm.
their lives as teachers. My when my uncle got arrested, when the time that big sow chased the little kid through the farm, like todas esas cosas that was so far away from Flushing, Queens, and it just fills your mind with imagination. My babysitter was not Doña Reina. My babysitter was Doña Mimi, Señora Mimi. And I wrote a book about her, a picture book, which makes me say, Liz, that I think Singing to the Plants is a picture book waiting to happen. We'll talk later, right? But that one you got to do. But those, I think place, I'm much older than you. So my New York was the New York of the 70s, right? Which was this also the rise of disco, the beginnings of hip hop, the Fania All-Stars.
Mm.
Also like Led Zeppelin and those groups were quote unquote new. So it was just an explosive time for women. And I'm thinking about that, especially now during Women's History Month, for women, for Latinos, for the city. There was just a lot of strife. It was just, there were so many cross currents. And story in my house was just part of how we coped. And so it just became a habit. Listening for story, using using it to understand people and why they did the sometimes really crazy things they did.
Oh, okay, so hip hop's come up twice, so we're going to come back to that eventually. I'm going to keep it. I'm going to keep it on the awards for right now. And Meg, I want to ask you a Newbery question. So when you first won the Newbery, what vision or memory stands out the most? And I'm not talking about necessarily like the public part of it, but like the really personal part of knowing that this is happening.
Mm.
Yeah, so there's always people always ask about the call, right? There's this fascination with the call, and the call is very, you know, life-changing, because it came out of nowhere to me. It felt like I got hit by a meteor. I was at the gym working out and I came home. I was in my shower, so I'm listening to this news that makes no sense to me whatsoever, what is happening. So I do remember that, but what I mostly remember about that day was first calling Javier, my husband. He was still working in corporate America, and I told him to go to an office and hide. And I've known Javier since I'm 5. So we've seen everything together. And, I told him, and he just burst into tears. Like it was just massive. And then I took my dog for a walk. because there's a period of time between the time you know and the time the world knows. And there was this precious little bit of time when it was only me who knew. And I walked around the block really just trying to wrap my head around what was happening because it just seemed so improbable. And then, afterward, I remember calling you
Well,
afterward.
so this is the first of my personal stories. I don't tend to inject these into these calls, but like, so for those who don't know, Meg and I have been friends for years and probably talk once a week.
Yeah.
And so we have a long tradition of keeping track of who's winning the awards the days that they are announced. And I was coming back from an event. I was on a plane, so we weren't having our typical phone call, but I could text. And I text you and say, "Hey, I'm on a plane. Who won the Newbery?" And Meg Meg texted back was like, "I gotta call you later." And I'm sitting on the plane like, why Meg acting weird? Like, why you just tell me who won the Newbery? Like, what's going on? And like I said, I'm in the air, have absolutely no clue. And then I land and the notifications are popping up all over social media and stuff. And so I knew why Meg was acting weird in that moment. So again, that and I have a story for Liz that Liz has heard before, but many of y'all may not have. But I'll ask you first, Liz. How was it? Because the National Book Award is more akin to like an Oscar, where nobody knows publicly who's won, not even the nominees, until it's announced on stage. And
Mhm.
I'm curious what that moment was like for you in the audience, knowing you're one of the five, but no clue whose name is going to be announced.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I really didn't, and it wasn't like that I doubted myself or I doubted my book. I thought I remember being like, I've made something great. And like I was very proud of the Poet X. But I was in a category with people who have been writing for like 30, 40 years. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like people I read when I was in middle school. And so I'm like, this is great. I'm just happy to be here, right? Like I'm just happy to be at the party. Like this is my first book. Like there's no way I'm beating the OGs. And I'm all right with that. Right. So they, Robin Benway is on stage and she's holding the NBA and she says my name and I like stopped and I put my head down because I couldn't actually process. Like it took me a second. And so everyone flips to our table. So all the cameras, all the other tables are looking, they're clapping. And I'm just like with my head because I'm kind of like, this didn't just happen. Like I couldn't actually take it in. My husband sitting next to me, he's like, you got to get up now. You got to go up there now. And I remember walking towards Robin and Robin is like handing it to me. She goes, it's really heavy. Prepare yourself. And just that moment of like the handoff and having to like brace for like, okay, and like there's weight with this, right? I didn't have a speech. Like I, prior to, my publicist at the table, my publicist is like, so you have your speech ready? I was like, I didn't really write a speech because I don't, what do I need a speech for? And she's like, you need a speech. And so on napkins, I kind of wrote bullet points and was like, thank this person and this person, tell this story and like do this. And so it was wild. It was wild. And in retrospect, I should have written a speech and been differently prepared. But also, I think it was like the gloriousness of just coming in very unexpected, even to myself. I remember listening to Cardi B and Chance the Rapper, and like I'm living my best life and like jumping on the bed with my husband as like we like pumped up for this event and just being like, we're at this hotel room. Like, this is, I felt like I'd won, like I was just felt so grateful and lucky to for all of it that it was remarkable. I mean, to this day I wish I had kind of maybe a little more plum, but I just handled it the way I handled it and I was just so joyous, you know.
So this will be the second of my personal stories because I know exactly what you're talking about being in that room at that moment because I was on the committee that awarded the Poet X the National Book Award that year. And this was the part that really like, and I've told you this story a few times. We'd never met before, but
Mhm.
before the ceremony, there's like a little cocktail mixer thing. People are walking around, and I knew you were there. All the nominees were there, but I was sort of in the corner. I was
Yeah.
texting my wife about something, and when I glanced up, you're right there. And you're like, hi, I just wanted to say, you introduce yourself. And I am shook because at that point I know who the winner is. And I was so scared I would give it away. Like I almost said congratulations. And I could have played it off. It could have been like congratulations for making the short list, but I'm
Yeah,
almost certain the congratulations I said wouldn't have sounded like congratulations for being five. It's
yeah.
congratulations for being one.
Mm.
And so to this day, I don't know what I said to you because I was so terrified, and I just hope I wasn't acting weird. You said I wasn't acting weird, and I'm
No,
glad
I
I maintained the secret until the proper moment.
Everybody acts weird at that ceremony.
Yeah, yeah,
The year after, I don't remember, but I was on that committee the
Mhm.
year that Robin Benway actually won the National Book Award, and I saw her at the cocktail
Yeah.
party. I had the same problem, and you know what she said to me later? She said, "I thought you were talking to me because it was like the consolation prize, like just to be nice to me." And I was like, "Wow, it's a really weird thing." But I want to just like when Robin said to you, "This is heavy." I think that works on a lot of levels
For
because
sure.
it is. It is. And
Mhm.
that book in particular, I remember Poet X when it came out. I remember right before it came out, I was at the National Book Festival. Remember you came to visit me and they wouldn't let you in the green room, the dummies?
Yes,
Remember
yes.
that?
Snuck
And
me in.
I and we talked about it. I remember saying to you, all the good things are coming. All the
Mhm.
good things are coming because the book was luminous, as Lamar well knows, and everybody who's read it. It was just such a gorgeous book of its time and the voice and the girl. It was just, I'm so glad it won and that it got all the accolades it did. It was really beautiful.
yeah. You can't see it in my room because of the way the camera's positioned, but I have floating shelves behind me. There's also a floating shelf to my left that has the long list from that year, and I have the
Oh,
Poet X sitting right on top because of your
mhm.
win, Liz. Um,
Thank
so I want to stay with you for a second because there's a little bit extra to this because the Poet X was your debut. So
Mhm.
not only is it an amazing accomplishment to win a National Book Award, but I'm curious what it's like from your perspective when it's your debut novel. Because, and I'm asking this because I'm thinking about my own debut. There's a lot of uncertainty with your first book. Like, you don't know if it's the only book you're ever going to publish, you don't know how people are going to react. And now, first of all, it got all sorts of praise just when people read it because it's brilliant. But now you have this major award. How does that change, let's say, pressure
Yeah.
from going from a debut to a National Book Award winning debut?
I think that one thing folks should know about me is that I'm always writing. And so I turned in the Poet X and I had two or three other manuscripts already done, right? Like I was just constantly working on the next thing. And part of how I handle my anxiety, even to this day, is once the book is in first pass pages, I'm so worried about what it'll become that I'm kind of like, I have to focus on another project. I have to be excited about other characters and other things. So with the Fire on High was already in arc form and I didn't know that. And so the very next day after winning the National Book Award, I think I went to maybe it was NCTE. I think that's the November conference right after. Um, and they are giving away galleys of my next book. And I actually couldn't process this major like life achievement to some extent, and now this other thing that I'm like, wait, I don't know if I would write this differently if I knew the kind of pressure that is going to be on this book, the kind of eyes on this book. But it was too late to kind of snag it back. I kind of just had to be thankful that I don't have to worry about writing the sophomore book because it's written. And also, would I have navigated this differently if I knew what was coming, right? And so, and Clap When You Land, which was my third novel, was also already in manuscript form. Like, I had these books, but um, it did a number on me, and I didn't think it would because I've been performing in stages. I've toured the country. I've toured the world. I used to do 100 presentations a year. I'm like, there is nothing that is harder than performing in a cafeteria. Your deepest, darkest poem while college students eat sloppy joes and are like, why is this lady yelling at us? Like, there's nothing like that for 45 minutes to then be like, I'm going to do this until I get my check. And so it kind of felt like, I, what does it mean to be incapable of handling too much success? Right? Like, I've had the other side. I've paid the dues. Like, this is where you reap. But it was hard to kind of my own internal barometer of what I had to do moving forward, and learning to accept, like, you may not win this again. You may not, like this. There was a part of me that was like, oh, everything I ever, write will be gilded. And it's like, that might not be true. And that's okay. Right. But I had to learn to accept, like, that may not even be the book I think is my best book. And yet it is the book that is awarded in that way. And it's about time and people and your readership, and um, kind of letting go of the expectations that I put on my work, and just keep leveling up as a writer, keep doing what I need to do for my craft. And then once it's published, like, that's not my book anymore. Right. It belongs almost to the world now. And so, at 30, that was a hard lesson to learn. And I mean, thankfully, I was dropped in the very next day. I learned it quick, or had to start the process of learning it very quickly, because um, my books after that were very different and had their own kind of trajectories. But it's kind of a mind fuck in some ways. Can I say that? I don't know. In some
Hey,
ways, to like,
we got it on tape, so it's going to stand. I'm okay with it.
okay,
Meg.
yeah, the like sides of success. Sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Meg, I got a similar question for you, because the Newbery set up a little differently, right? So Liz is talking about, you win the National Book Award this night. The next day you're at NCTE. We all know that trip. With the Newbery, the announcements in January, you don't actually get it until like June. And so there's this whole lead up to the big speech, the big moment, but you're also still working in between. And I'm curious, like for you, was there any change in how you were approaching your routines now that you've got this thing that's looming a little bit, in a good way? But is there pressure to do something different now that you're a Newbery medalist?
Yeah. I mean, so you do have to write a speech that gets published in the Horn Book. So, and you have to turn that in by March 1st or something like that. So you have to do this whole thing. And if you've ever been to the Newbery and the Caldecott awards thing, it's a big deal, and it's a very formal sort of evening. So that sort of occupies your time. But the biggest change for me is, I was by the time I won the Newbery, I had won the Pura Belpré for Yaqui Delgado Wants to Kick Your Ass, like, and an award for the Aisa Wants a Car. So my work was known among librarians. I was respected among librarians and teachers. But when you win the Newbery, it's a whole different thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your book is never going to go out of print, and you're sort of catapulted. So your phone starts ringing. You're getting a lot of requests to do a lot of school visits and conferences and signings and blogs. And so suddenly that part, the public part, not the artist part, but the business and the public part of your career, like takes off. So, I had to get an assistant, right, to help me just man things. Um,
Mm-hmm.
uh, there's a difference in your print runs. There's a difference now in the the amount of money that you're going to command for projects, right? When you go out on sub. So all of those things were good things. But remember, I won the Newbery in 2019. What happened in 2020?
Yikes.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
So my two follow-up books to Mercy, it ended up being a trilogy. Merci Suárez Changes Gears follows Merci Suárez in the sixth grade as she comes to terms with with her grandfather's Alzheimer's, and just with the insanity that is middle school. So that I had the seventh grade one, Merci Suárez Can't Dance, was being written before I got the Newbery. And then I wrote the third book, Merci Suárez Plays It Cool, after I won. But what ended up happening is that the books withered on the vine, basically, right? Because COVID happened, and the books that were really making it then were like The Very Hungry Caterpillar and like the sort of classic kind of books. But it was hard for people writing whose works featured characters from the margins, right? Like those books did not get catapulted. And my books were among those casualties. So that was hard to watch.
Mm.
And I think Liz is right. Like when you win a big award, like the National Book Award, the Newbery, there's that's it, right? Like that's the super pinnacle of in our realm of children's publishing and young people's publishing. But I still have life, like I still have a writing life and a creative life. So will I ever win another award? Right? I hate that I ask myself that question. I
Yeah.
loathe myself for that
Hmm.
that back thing that goes on in my head when a new book of mine comes out. I get lovely reviews, it's well received, but I may or may not ever get another award. And it gets weird. It's like, and Lamar, you probably know this, like, it's like if your books are typically reviewed, in Kirkus and School Library Journal, whatever, if you're used to getting nice reviews, if the review doesn't have a star, let's say, or if they didn't review it that cycle, you're like, huh, right? And
Yeah.
so like I'm taking names, and it's just it becomes really weird. And I really hate that that is true. But like Liz, I think time time and maturity kicks in, right, in this business. Um, and I've been at this now since 2008, and I've learned to take a really long view. And as I'm in my 60s now, right? And so now I'm thinking, what do I want the back half of my career to look like? What did this Newbery mean, right, to the kind of work I'm producing and what I want, most importantly, what I want to leave behind. And it feels sort of fatal, right, to be thinking about that way. But, you know, there are other things in my life I love too, right? Like I don't need to write 100 books. That does not have to be me. I need to write and to the place where I can also still have room in my life for the other things that really matter to me and that I love. Um, so that's what I'm wrestling with now.
I want to come back to this because I want to talk about what it's like in the years after the
Mhm.
major award. But I want to go back to the immediate aftermath, and I want to talk about like what's some of the cool stuff that we might not know about. Like the minute you win it, like movie stars sliding into your DM. Like we want to be in the Liz Acevedo business. We want to be in the Meg Medina business. Like who we got to talk to. Is that the sort of stuff that happens immediately after the award? I don't know, so I'm curious.
I remember Robin right after was like, prepare for your life to change. And so on Monday, I was like, all right, life, what's up? Where you at? Right. And it's so gradual, right? It's in how you're received. It's in like for sure the excitement online. And my agent started getting all of like these requests for events, like Meg was saying. But it for a debut, at least, it was a little bit of like uh I was the door opened up a little bit wider, right, for certain rooms that I was like, oh, I'm not sure if I would have been invited into this room if that award weren't attached to my name, right? Whether or not that book had, it'd been star reviewed, it had all this stuff, but that sticker did something, right? And so you kind of start feeling it that way. But nah, there was no celebrities. I can't say that. I feel like maybe the Newbery. What was yours?
Well, the sweetest thing is that all the former Newbery medalists reach out to you,
Yeah.
and they reach out with advice and with the
Oh,
things that you need to be able to talk to somebody about, because truly the financial changes and the number of print copies, like all of it's the business thing that really
Yeah.
changes dramatically.
Mm.
But yeah, but I agree with you. I think the biggest change was that, when you write, I don't know if you find this, Liz, tell me what you think, but I write books that have like Suarez in the title, Dia in the title, and so many people self-select out of that, right? In mainstream, like this is not a book for us, or, this is really for a specific group of people. And when it had the Newbery sticker on it, it's almost like it said, no, this is a book for
Yeah.
all, right?
Which
This
is
is a
something,
book
right?
about childhood, right?
Yeah.
And that felt like a relief because that continues to be a thing, right? Like
Yeah.
continuing to, especially now, right, in the current political climate where our experience itself, the eyes we sit behind, can be called unpatriotic or all kinds of horrible things. And so I feel like the Newbery gave me some protection from that and gave me entree to people, I don't know, who feel challenged or uncertain about reading
Yeah.
across experiences, even today.
I think maybe I agree that it put eyes on my work that may not have been on my work otherwise. But I think there was also like a hunger for that same kind of book again. And and also maybe like a little bit of like little voice, this won't happen again unless you write that same kind of book. And I just inherently resist that. Like that just doesn't feel like artistry to me, to like just pump out the same kind of book, like another novel in verse with the same formula. Like that's just not joyous. And so I think there was also a little bit of needing to resist, like um the eyes come, they adore it, and they're like, all right, where's the other thing just like this? And then being, needing to point to like, well, here are these other writers that are writing similarly, but like, I'm not going to give you this same thing
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
right? Like, hopefully, right, if I'm doing my job right, I'm not doing that.
It's
So,
so different from like TV, right? Like you get a hit
yes,
show or you get a hit movie and then you get 12 that are just the same, right?
yeah,
Like just like minutely different.
yeah,
And it's that tendency. This worked, this sold, can you do it again? And creatively, that's your death.
that's
I
it.
I
Yeah,
agree. Right now, I'm doing the same sort of soul searching. Like I'm trying new formats. I'm writing for different age groups. Like all of that has felt necessary to just play around with voice and what are the concerns of kids at different ages and what do I have to say about growing up, which I found excruciating, in a lot of moments. And so uh, how do I want to talk to somebody who's 7 about that? 17, 12. Do I want to tell them, do I want to talk to them, in a novel, in a chapter book? Like, I don't know.
right.
So
Yeah,
I want to get into that a little bit deeper. It sort of dovetails into a question I have, but we have a question from the audience that I want to read to you. And this says, since you've won so many awards and have that external validation, what would a successful book be for you now?
Um, I wish I could lie to you right now.
Mhm.
I wish I could front right now, but I'm going to just tell you the truth. This is a really hard, for me, this is a really hard business on your sense of self.
yeah.
Because it does hinge so much on whether other people liked it, right? Whether other people could relate to this thing that you felt very deeply that you wanted to write about.
Mhm.
So my most recent book's a good example. So Graciela in the Abyss um, has, I think it was like 6-starred reviews. It got really, really good feedback from readers. It didn't win any awards. That book took me 15 years to write. I started writing that book in 2010. when you go back into my computer in the little thing called the graveyard, I have my first versions of that book. It was supposed to be my sophomore novel, and it took all those years to really wrap my head around the story. It took COVID, it took Trump, it took my mother's death, it took all this stuff to help me shape a story about regret and community. So I feel like that book was a success for me. I wrote a fantasy. I'd never written a fantasy before. I wrote a book that really, I think, explores what I think is missing right now, this falling away from a sense that we owe anybody anything in our community, right? This it's all about me thing, right? I feel like it was successful, but there is a piece of me that
Mm,
because it didn't receive an award or a nod or a whatever, that I feel like I came up short. And that's crazy.
mm,
And I know it's crazy, but I'm telling you the truth
yeah.
because it's you too. If I was somewhere else, I'd say,
You know,
that's
Liz,
another answer.
before you go, Liz, I'll say this. And what's wild about what Meg just said is Meg often reminds me of exactly what she said and how, we're all very fortunate to be in this career at all.
Yeah.
Because I think we all feel it. We had those moments where you feel down, the thing didn't go your way. And it's
Mhm.
like, and that's part of the joy of being able to talk to Meg once a week because we can sort of remind ourselves like, hey, we're still here, we're still doing it. So yeah, I mean, but thank you for letting everyone else in on that, Meg. I want to talk a little bit about routines. I'm always curious when I get a chance to talk to the super friends. Like, how is it you approach your practice now? And I'm gonna bring up Meg. You and I talked recently about ways to sort of make ourselves focus because the world feels like it's on fire and we're often distracted. And I sent you pictures of a bunch of weird stuff in my office that helps me focus. I'll explain if y'all want me to, but I'd like to hear from both of you first. Like, and particularly if you're thinking about the scope of your career beginning to now, what sort of rituals, routines, or disciplines help you stay grounded?
Mm,
Uh, I would say you help me stay grounded. I would absolutely say that's true. I feel like our conversations are a place where we could say the unthinkable things. We could say the unthinkable things and they stay in the vault and we could breathe. And we talk about all things, our children, the world, politics, books, all the things, and just deposit it there. I think right now it's very hard to tap into the joy and the buoyancy that you need to write for young people, right? Because as hard as growing up is, there is always a sense of hope and a forward trajectory when you're writing for young people, right? That the future is still there, right? For them to shape and to step into and to, grab and take on their own terms. But it's hard, the news, the book bans, all of those things. I have tried really hard to limit. I do a lot of work on social media, but a lot of that I sort of pre-record. My assistant helps me with that. I try to come to the page early when I'm still happy in the morning. I haven't been slammed by things. And I don't think you can underestimate like really taking care of your health, which is a weird thing to say, but walking and hydrating and like um not doing the things to your body and to yourself that ultimately hurt it. I think we all need we need to row together. We need to feel like that we are in a community that it is not hopeless right now. And so for me, it's connection, I think. And then, looking at these weird things that you use, these timers, I don't know. I
So,
can't go that far.
so explain what Meg's talking about because I typically work best super early. I wake up super early, like 4:35, and that's typically my best time to write. But I have a 4-year-old now, so what tends to happen is anytime I get up, she gets up, and I can't really put her off to go write. So it tends to be that times getting her ready for daycare and things of that nature. So by the time I get to my desk, I'm kind of already worn out a little bit. So I had to trick
Mhm.
myself. And so I have this thing called a Pomodoro cube, which some of you may have seen or know, where you set like 25-minute increments where you're supposed to focus, like nothing distracts you. Then you take a 5-minute break.
Mhm.
So I showed that to Meg, but I said, Meg, Adrian, my wife, bought me this lamp that I also turn on. And so I'm a Star Wars guy. The lamp is Darth Vader in his bacta tank. So the lamp's full of water, and it's Anakin Skywalker dipped down. And when I turn the lamp on, it like shoots bubbles up in like increments. And Meg is like, how does that help you focus at all? And I was trying to explain to her, it's sort of like the what is that thing when people play piano? Is that a metronome?
Yeah.
Mm.
It's so
Yeah.
that's my metronome. So like the bubbles are like the and that and so I use all these things to kind of get back into a groove mid morning when I probably would have done better writing early. So weird stuff in my office. Liz, how do you get it done?
Hard with kids. I'm curious with both of you that I didn't start writing when I had little kids. Go ahead.
Yeah. I think the kids create definitely a pressure because when they're home, right, when they're back from daycare, they're back from school, like that's it. And by the time 7 rolls around and they're in bed, like my brain, and I'm a night writer, and I've been my whole life, and I've had to switch to kind of like a middle of the day writing because, mornings are for getting them ready and like just starting the day, and then evenings are shot. I have to leave the house, which is what helps me. I either go to a cafe or I go to a library, I go to some type of office situation. But if I'm in the house, I'm going to be doing things that are on my checklist for like the things that need to happen to make our lives kind of move forward. And so I try to block out 3 hours out of the day after my workout to just go sit somewhere. And I like being around people. I don't need headphones to write. Like there's something about the noise and sound. I've always been able to write with like the world intruding. It just kind of comes in. Um, but I will say that walking has been really, really helpful, particularly as things feel awful right now. There's something about the forward movement and momentum. I think my body really responds to more than a treadmill or a bike, like the act of I was there and now I'm here and there's a forward to go to, right? Like I live in DC, so walking around the tidal basin is my favorite kind of walk, and just seeing like MLK, seeing the monuments and just kind of being in this space that's like, you know, awful things have happened, and seeing the reminders of forward, right? And memory, but also, you know, there have been awful instances before and people were still able to create and be and um find joy. And so trying to do that. But I would say I'm not really great with routines right now. I think I'm still in it. I have an 8-month old. He's still waking me up in the middle of the night. Like if I can get an hour of writing, like success, I won. Like I'm sure
I
there'll
think
be
that's
routines.
amazing. I
Yeah.
think that's amazing. And this 25-minute business, I can't do it.
Mhm.
I need to drop into the zone for me to,
Yeah.
like when you're in a movie theater and you're
Yeah.
looking at the movie and you're there, you're sitting in one spot staring forward for two
Yeah.
hours. And you don't realize that that's what if I
Yeah.
told you to do that right now, sit in that chair and stare at a spot for 2 hours, like who does that?
Yeah.
But you do it in the movies. And I need that level
Yeah.
of transport in my
I do the
imagination.
50 minutes. So 50 minutes and then 10-minute block, which is the other kind of the extended Pomodoro.
But no, Liz, I feel you on the infant thing. Like one of my favorite pictures I have is when my daughter was first born. I was writing the script for my DC Comics graphic novel, and so I have this photo of her foot on the bed and my laptop next to her foot while she's napping, and I'm trying to get it done. It's like anything you can, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
That's the myth, right? Like of the artist, right? That the writer or the illustrator has this. The fact is you have to have this career around your actual life. And
Mm,
as much as you love this, and I do, I live and breathe it all the time. There are other parts of you that continue to exist. And you have to figure out how to make those things work. That can be really hard and draining sometimes.
Well, this is somewhat related. Like, how do you two think about longevity in your career in this industry, particularly the way our industry shifts? It seems to be like clockwork every 5 years. Like, how do you see the long game for yourself?
Well, for me, I'm definitely thinking about being in the whatever they call it, the back nine or whatever of my years. Like I feel like I have no idea how long I will write, but I know that I'm going to be changing different things that I write. Um, Earlier in my career, I wrote YA novels, Yaki Delgado and Burn Baby Burn. I don't feel the urgency for YA right now. I feel closer to middle grade somehow. I love writing picture book for little kids. I might do, nonfiction in not in terms of writing like narrative nonfiction. There's, I'm not sure. I just feel like there'll be a slowing down for me, and I feel like your career doesn't stay the same over the length of it. Thank God, right? Just like you're not the same person you were 10 years ago or 15 years ago. You've grown, you've changed, you've developed. The same thing is true about what you will choose to do in your work. At this point, I'm thinking of legacy, but not in the overblown word. Like, what is my legacy? Like, I'm thinking of it of what, when I'm done, right? What is it that I want my work to have meant to people? And what did I leave for the next, to seed the next group, right, coming. So I sit on a board for Latino Kidlit Book Festival. I am very selective about the things that I want to help grow. Um, and I'm going to be more selective about the projects I take on,
Mhm.
just moving forward. And that's just realistic. I don't want to get to the place where I'm not writing well. I don't want to
Mhm.
get to the place where nobody cares what I've written. You know what I mean? I want to leave the party at the right time.
Yeah.
And I don't know when that is exactly, but it feels unbelievable to me that I would ever think this way. If you would have told me when I first started that I would be thinking this way of what Linda Supar calls my exit strategy. But it's not an exit exactly as much as an evolution strategy.
Yeah.
How about you?
Um, I don't necessarily know about publishing, but I do know that I think I'm in the school of Julia Alvarez, who is in her late 70s and is like, I'm going to die writing. Like I'm going to die writing books. And I think the same. I just have so many ideas and a long list of like project summaries and things I want to jump into. Um, and I think the landscape of literature is changing. I think the landscape of how books will be made potentially is changing. And so there might be pivots that have to be made there. And I think that's publishing. But at the level of writing, like I'm just not a good person if I'm not writing. And so longevity in terms of output, I don't know. I think there's still a lot of stories that I want to tell. I'd love to publish a poetry collection, right? I think that I've published novels in verse. I have a chapbook, but I don't have a poetry collection. I think that'd be lovely. I have adult novels in the works, and so I think I'm gonna probably toggle between YA and adult novels. Now that I have my little kids, I'm like, oh man, a picture book could be fun, right? So I'm reading so many picture books. I'm reading so many board books that the ideas are kind of sort of there,
I'm
but
telling you the plant story,
I
the
know.
singing to the plant story.
Meg is good at suggesting your
Do you
next
I'm
project.
writing that. That's not bad.
I've
But
always got a whole bunch of advice stories for
I take it. I'm
Lamar.
gonna write it down. Yeah.
So we only have a few minutes left. We'll take a quick break to make a couple of announcements, and then we'll come back. I have some quick questions for you too. So I'm going to try to share my screen. I always worry I'm going to mess this up, but let's see. Hopefully you can see this picture. Um, April 8th, our next World of Publishing event will happen. You can register at the same place you registered for this one. I'm going to be in conversation with some Virginia creators, Carter Higgins and Amber McBride. That will be the last World of Publishing webinar. So if you've enjoyed these, I hope you come out and see the conversation with Amber and Carter. And one more announcement. This is an in-person event on April 21st. We're going to be in conversation with America's hottest thriller writer, S.A. Cosby. He'll be on the William and Mary campus at the PBK studio. This is an in-person event with limited seating. So I messed up and did not bring the link for registration, but you can register through the library site and you can follow me on social media if you want to attend. Um, this will be a good time. So if you're able to come out, I sure hope that you do. So I think we're back and you can see our faces. And I have a couple of quick questions. I said I'd come back to hip hop. So Liz, top three MCs.
Jay-Z, Nas, Jean Grey.
Okay, okay. And I mean, because I asked the question, I feel compelled to answer it as well. For me, Black Thought, Nas, and Cannabis, who we haven't,
Oh,
yeah, 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 yeah,
yeah, wow. Yeah,
yeah.
for sure, lyricist. Yeah.
Um, Meg, what is a book you're looking forward to reading your grandson?
Oh, my own, my picture books. I can't wait till Carter is a little bit over one right now. So he loves books. In fact, Carter Higgins books, which is kind of interesting, like all the picture book kinds of things. Um, but I want to read like Mango, Abuela and Me, and Tia Isa wants a car when he's ready. Yeah.
My kiddo loves Tia Issa, so yeah.
Yeah, you sent me that picture, which was fun.
Liz, I may do a weekend getaway to DC with the missus sometime soon. Where
Okay.
should I eat? I'll take any suggestions.
I have two. So
Okay.
they're both Caribbean. They are top notch. St. James, which is in the U Street area, you have to get the jerk wings. And if they have the vegan menu, amazing. And Isla, which is a little bit more like, put on some shoes, get a little fancy. The Obamas ate there like a couple months ago, but it's just this gorgeous, opulent eating experiences. So that's for like the final night, go get a drink, dress up. But St. James and Isla.
I'm
No,
writing down
thank,
Isla right now.
thank
Yeah,
you.
it's
Thank
gorgeous.
you.
Yeah.
Meg,
Yeah.
when you were at the Library of Congress, what's the coolest thing you saw? Like, I want to hear the secrets. Is the Ark of the Covenant there? That sort of thing.
There are so many weird things about it's a beautiful place. The whole building is gorgeous. So for anybody who hasn't been there, you need to put that on your list. What's weird about the Library of Congress is underneath all of the library are these series of tunnels, the ugliest tunnels, but you can seriously get lost forever. I always think I should do a children's book of somebody getting lost down in there. But probably the coolest thing I think is not what I saw, but what I heard, the Palabra archive. It's got like 800 recordings of incredible, like Gabriel Garcia Marquez reading from 100 Years of Solitude, Julia Alvarez, all the
Wow.
greats from across the diaspora. And it's chilling, like to hear them reading their work in their voice. So that's for me, that was really a beautiful experience.
I'm always curious when I get the super friends together. Uh, what's the most fun thing you have purchased or done with writing money?
Oh, man. All right, you confess first, Liz. I
No, I'm trying to
have to
think.
think. I have to think. I'm so criminally responsible.
It's wild to me as someone who was a performing poet that like, I always call it poetry money. Like poetry money bought me a house. So like I would say that. And like there have been some gorgeous vacations. Like, we'd
Yeah,
be on a beach somewhere doing the things. So I'd say
yeah.
nice
Nice.
vacations.
I made an apartment for my daughter. My oldest daughter, Christina, lives with us. She's intellectually disabled, and so she lives with us. And we decided to take the first floor of our house and make it into an apartment for her. And that was with the money that started to come in after the Newbery. So that isn't super fun, except for her.
Yeah.
She had a good time.
Well,
I love it.
I share too because I asked the question. I'm not gonna just put y'all out there. So aside from like you said, Liz, the house and some nice vacations. Last time I told everyone about my lightsaber that's over my shoulder. That's Darth
Oh,
Vader's lightsaber. But another thing I do is I tend to hire an artist to do sort of the characters of a book that I just finished in the style of a movie poster that I like. So, for
oh,
example, Liz, you and I did an event for Not So Pure and Simple. So I had
mhm.
this artist do the characters from that book in the Breakfast Club pose, the famous Breakfast Club poster. You can't see, I'll show it to you if I could turn the camera that way, but that's something fun that I like to do from time to time.
That's cool. That's a great idea. I
Nice.
So
like that.
we're almost at time. I just have one more question. Well, first of all, thank you both for hanging out with us. I'm just curious what you're working on next.
So my novel, Anger is Only a Shadow, will be out in September. And so I'm in the first pass pages, picking out covers, working through that. And so um, that's where my head's at.
My God, this is the one that you really love. Now I can't wait to, you
Yeah.
better send me as soon as
I,
possible.
I got
You
you.
send me something because I want to read.
I also want
Um,
to put my gallery request in.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. The two
we
of
can
us, we're number one and two on that list. Okay.
for sure.
I have a, picture book coming out called My Roller Skates, illustrated by Leo Espinosa, next year. And also, signed a contract for a chapter book series with Candlewick, Emmy Grande Grady, living her best second grade life. And so the first book, Emmy Grande Grady versus the Book-O-Matic, comes out in 2027 also. So writing for very, very little kids.
Very
Yeah,
nice.
Fun.
yeah.
I'm looking forward to it.
Me
Thank you
too.
both again for hanging out with me. Thank you to the audience members who came out to watch. We'll be back April 8th. Everyone have a wonderful week.
Bye,
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.